4 of 2024's top 10 highest-grossing movies lost hundreds of millions of dollars anyway. How is that even possible? How do you print 9 figures at the box office and still have your studio accountants looking for the exit? 2024 answered that question 4 times over, and by the end of this video, you'll know exactly which blockbusters crashed hardest, why Hollywood's math doesn't work the way you think, and what it means for every movie on your watch list next year. Before we dive into the numbers, we need to understand what we're actually measuring here. We're talking about the top 10 highest-grossing films of 2024 worldwide. That's total ticket sales across every market, every country, every theater. But here's the twist. High gross doesn't automatically mean high profit. In fact, it doesn't guarantee profit at all. A movie can pull in $500 million and still torch its studio's quarterly earnings. The culprit? Production budgets that balloon past $200 million, marketing campaigns that cost another $100 million, and a box office split where theaters and foreign distributors take massive cuts before the studio sees a dime. So when we say a movie flopped, we're not talking about ticket sales. We're talking about the cold math of revenue minus expenses. And in 2024, that math got brutal. Here's what qualifies an entry for this breakdown. First, the film had to rank in the worldwide top 10 for total gross. Second, if it lost money, we're including it in our flop autopsy. Third, we're using reported budget figures with careful phrasing because Hollywood accounting is famously opaque. Some sources claim one number, others claim another. We're going with ranges when precision isn't confirmed. And fourth, we're focusing on what audiences rejected or what went wrong strategically, not just bad reviews. Why does this matter? Because 2024 was a year of recalibration. Streaming changed theatrical economics. Superhero fatigue became real. Audiences voted with their wallets, and sometimes those votes were harsh. This is the story of how Hollywood tried to win big and where 4 of its biggest swings struck out. Now, one of these films made over $1 billion and still became infamous as one of the year's most divisive disasters. We'll get to that one around the halfway mark. Another lost more money than some entire studio slates combined. That one's coming too. And by the end, you'll see a pattern emerge about what 2024 audiences wanted versus what they got. Let's count down the top 10. Number 10, Sonic the Hedgehog. 3, 2024. Sonic the Hedgehog 3 raced into theaters in late December and immediately proved that family-friendly franchises with momentum can still dominate. The film brought back the speedy blue hedgehog alongside Knuckles and Tails, this time facing Shadow, a powerful new rival with a tragic backstory. Keanu Reeves voiced Shadow, which alone generated massive buzz. Jim Carrey returned in dual roles as both Dr. Robotnik and his grandfather, delivering the manic energy fans loved from the first 2 films. The movie leaned hard into fan service, pulling deep cuts from the Sonic video game lore while keeping the tone accessible for kids and nostalgic adults. Action sequences felt bigger, the emotional beats landed harder, and the pacing stayed brisk. By early 2025, Sonic 3 crossed $490 million worldwide. That's serious money for a franchise that started as a Hail Mary to prove video game movies could work. Here's why it belongs here. Sonic 3 wasn't just successful, it was efficiently successful. The production budget reportedly came in around $120 to $130 million. That's reasonable for a modern blockbuster. Marketing pushed hard but smartly, targeting families and gamers without oversaturating. And the film opened during the holiday corridor, capturing audiences looking for fun escapism between awards bait and superhero fatigue. The lesson? Build your franchise slowly, respect your audience, and don't overspend. Sonic 3 made money because it knew exactly what it was and didn't try to be an epic or a prestige play. It was a crowd pleaser that delivered on its promise. And speaking of delivering on promises, the next film proved that animated sequels can still print money if you tap into genuine emotion. Number 9. Kung Fu Panda 4, 2024. Kung Fu Panda 4 brought Po back for another round of martial arts mayhem and spiritual growth. This time, Po faced the challenge of training a new dragon warrior while confronting a shape-shifting sorceress villain voiced by Viola Davis. The film leaned into Po's journey from student to teacher, exploring themes of legacy and letting go. DreamWorks Animation delivered the vibrant visuals fans expected, with kinetic fight choreography and lush Chinese-inspired landscapes. Jack Black's voice work kept Po endearing and funny without repeating the same beats from earlier films. The movie also introduced Jen, a thief-turned-ally who provided fresh dynamics and set up potential future stories. Kung Fu Panda 4 grossed approximately $547 million worldwide. That's a solid haul, especially for a fourth entry in a franchise that started back in 2008. The film proved that if you maintain quality and give audiences something emotionally resonant, they'll show up even for a sequel that could have felt unnecessary. Why it fits? Kung Fu Panda 4 succeeded because it didn't coast on nostalgia alone. It evolved Po's character meaningfully while delivering the action and humor fans wanted. The budget was reportedly around $100 million, making this a profitable venture that justified DreamWorks' continued investment in the franchise. The takeaway: animated franchises can sustain themselves for decades if each entry earns its existence with character growth and fresh stakes. Kung Fu Panda 4 didn't reinvent the wheel, but it kept the wheel spinning smoothly. And just when you thought animation was carrying the year, the next entry proved that big-budget sci-fi spectacles can still capture imaginations. Number 8. Godzilla x Kong: The New Empire, 2024. Godzilla x Kong: The New Empire smashed its way into theaters with the delirious energy of a movie that knows exactly what it is. A monster brawl dressed up with just enough plot to justify 2 hours of city-leveling chaos. This time, Godzilla and Kong teamed up to face a new Titan threat emerging from the Hollow Earth, the hidden world beneath our planet's surface. The film doubled down on spectacle, with neon-soaked battles, gravity-defying action, and creatures so massive they made skyscrapers look like toys. Director Adam Wingard embraced the absurdity, giving Kong a mechanical arm and letting Godzilla charge up with pink atomic energy. The human characters existed mostly to exposit between fights, but honestly, nobody bought a ticket for the humans. Godzilla x Kong grossed approximately $572 million worldwide, making it one of the year's most purely entertaining blockbusters. It didn't win awards or change cinema, but it delivered exactly what fans of the MonsterVerse wanted: 2 alpha titans wrecking everything in sight. Why it belongs. This movie succeeded because it embraced maximalism. The reported budget was around $135 million, and the film made that money back handily by understanding its audience. Fans of giant monster movies don't want restraint or subtlety. They want spectacle, and Godzilla x Kong delivered that in spades. The lesson: know your genre, know your audience, and give them the unhinged fun they crave. Godzilla x Kong didn't pretend to be high art. It was a blockbuster that earned its box office through sheer entertainment value. But not every big-budget spectacle in 2024 knew its lane, and one of the next entries became a cautionary tale about ambition outpacing execution. Number 7. Dune, Part 2, 2024. Dune. Part 2 arrived as one of the most anticipated sci-fi epics in years, and Denis Villeneuve delivered a film that felt like a genuine cinematic event. The sequel picked up immediately after Part 1, following Paul Atreides as he joined the Freeman Rebellion on Arrakis. The film explored Paul's transformation into a messianic figure, while grappling with the moral costs of his rise to power. Visually, Dune, Part 2 was stunning. Massive desert battles, intimate character moments, and a climactic showdown that felt operatic in scale. Timothée Chalamet, Zendaya, Rebecca Ferguson, and Austin Butler all delivered committed performances. The film also introduced Fade Routha, played by Butler as a menacing, bald-headed sociopath who became one of the year's most memorable villains. Dune, Part 2, grossed approximately $714 million worldwide. That's a strong number for a dense 3-hour sci-fi epic that doesn't pander or hold your hand. It proved that audiences will show up for ambitious, intellectually demanding blockbusters if the filmmaking is top tier. Why it fits. Dune. Part 2 succeeded because Villeneuve earned trust with Part 1 and delivered a sequel that honored the source material while remaining accessible. The reported budget was around $190 million, which is significant but justified by the scope. The film likely turned a profit, though final numbers depend on back-end deals and home entertainment. The takeaway: audiences will support challenging, unconventional blockbusters if the vision is clear and the execution is flawless. Dune. Part 2 proved that prestige sci-fi can still draw crowds in an era of franchise fatigue, and speaking of franchise fatigue, we're about to hit the point where the pattern starts to reveal itself. Thoroughbred 6, Mufasa, The Lion King, 2024. Mufasa, The Lion King took audiences back to the Pride Lands, this time exploring the origin story of Simba's father. The film used photorealistic CGI animation, the same style as the 2019 Lion King remake, to tell a story about a young Mufasa rising from humble beginnings to become king. Barry Jenkins directed, bringing his distinctive emotional sensitivity to a Disney blockbuster. The movie wove together past and present, with Rafiki narrating Mufasa's story to Simba's daughter Kiara. Aaron Pierre voiced young Mufasa, while Kelvin Harrison Jr. voiced Taka, a young lion who would eventually become Scar. The film explored their brotherhood and tragic falling out, adding depth to a villain who was mostly one note in the original. Mufasa grossed over $720 million worldwide as of early 2025, and it's still climbing. The film resonated with families and nostalgic fans, though some critics argued the photorealistic animation still lacked the expressive warmth of hand-drawn art. Why it belongs. Mufasa succeeded because it offered genuine backstory rather than just reheating the original. The reported budget was around $150 million, making this a profitable venture if marketing costs stayed reasonable. Disney banked on nostalgia and delivered a story that justified its existence beyond pure profit motive. The lesson: prequels work when they add meaningful context to beloved characters. Mufasa didn't just retell the Lion King story, it expanded the mythology in ways that felt earned. But now we're entering dangerous territory, because the next few films all grossed massive numbers, and 3 of them still lost staggering amounts of money. Number 5. Wicked, 2024. Wicked soared into theaters as the highly anticipated adaptation of Broadway's most successful musical. Director John M. Chu split the stage show into 2 films, with Part 1 covering the first act and focusing on the unlikely friendship between Elphaba, the misunderstood green-skinned girl who becomes the Wicked Witch of the West, and Glinda, the popular blonde who becomes Glinda the Good Witch. Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande starred as Elphaba and Glinda respectively, both delivering powerhouse vocal performances. The film leaned into lavish production design, with Shiz University rendered in stunning detail and musical numbers that felt grand without losing intimacy. Defying Gravity became the centerpiece, a show-stopping sequence that had audiences cheering in theaters. Wicked grossed over $750 million worldwide, an incredible number for a musical that doesn't have superheroes or explosions. It proved that audiences still crave big-screen musicals if the source material is beloved and the execution is respectful. Why it fits. Wicked succeeded because it delivered what fans wanted: faithfulness to the stage show, exceptional performances, and visual grandeur. The reported budget was around $150 million. This film is profitable, and Part 2 is guaranteed to draw massive crowds. The takeaway: Broadway adaptations can thrive theatrically if you respect the source material and cast performers who can sing the hell out of the score. Wicked didn't try to modernize or ironize the story. It embraced its earnest heart and soared. And now, before we get to the train wrecks, here's the pattern so far. The films that succeeded knew their audience, delivered on their promise, and didn't wildly overspend. They understood genre expectations and met them without apology. The films that flopped, they forgot those rules. Per 4, Despicable Me. 4, 2024. Flop, Despicable Me. 4 should have been a slam dunk. The franchise had printed money for Illumination since 2010, with the Minions becoming cultural icons and merchandise goldmines. This time, Gru and his family went on the run after a villain from Gru's past resurfaced seeking revenge. The film introduced Gru Jr., a baby who immediately caused chaos, and leaned hard into slapstick humor aimed at young kids. Despicable Me 4 grossed over $970 million worldwide. That's nearly $1 billion. So how did it flop? The problem was scale and expectation. The reported budget was around $100 million, which seems reasonable, but marketing costs were enormous, and the film failed to reach the cultural saturation of earlier entries. More critically, it felt tired. Critics and audiences noticed the franchise running on fumes, delivering the same gags and beats as previous films without innovation. The bet? Illumination. Assumed brand recognition and minion mania would carry the film. And financially, it mostly did. But culturally, Despicable Me 4 felt like the moment the franchise became a cash grab rather than a creative endeavor. It made money, but it didn't earn enthusiasm. And in a franchise business, losing audience goodwill is a ticking time bomb. The crash, while Despicable Me 4 likely turned a profit, it underperformed expectations and signaled diminishing returns. The franchise isn't dead, but it's on notice. Audiences are getting tired, and kids who loved the Minions a decade ago have aged out. Why it belongs. Despicable Me 4 represents the danger of complacency. It succeeded financially, but failed creatively, and that's a warning sign for future installments. The lesson: franchise fatigue is real. If your sequel feels like a rerun, audiences will show up once, but won't come back. Despicable Me 4 made money, but it lost something more valuable: momentum. And if Despicable Me 4 was a warning, the next entry was a full-blown disaster. Number 3. Moana 2, 2024. Moana 2 became one of Disney's biggest hits of 2024, crossing $1 billion worldwide and proving that animated sequels to beloved originals can still dominate. The film followed Moana as she embarked on a new journey across the ocean, this time with a crew of misfits, to find a hidden island that could save her people from an ancient curse. The animation was gorgeous, with water effects that showcased how far Disney's technology had advanced. Auli'i Cravalho returned to voice Moana, and Dwayne Johnson reprised Maui. The film introduced new songs, though none hit the cultural impact of How Far I'll Go from the first film. Moana 2 grossed over $1,059 million worldwide. It was a box office titan. But here's the twist: it barely scraped profitability. Reports suggest the budget was around $150 million, with marketing adding another $100 million or more. By the time theaters and distributors took their cuts, Disney's profit margin was razor thin. The bet? Disney assumed the Moana brand was unbeatable and greenlit a sequel that was originally developed as a Disney Plus series. They pivoted to theatrical at the last minute, retrofitting a streaming project into a blockbuster. The rush showed in the story, which felt episodic rather than cinematic. The crash. Moana 2 made $1 billion and still underperformed expectations for profitability. That's the economics of modern blockbusters. A film can gross 10 figures and still barely cover its costs. Why it belongs. Moana 2 is a flop in the sense that it didn't deliver the profit Disney needed to justify its budget. It's also a reminder that box office totals are misleading. Revenue isn't profit. The lesson, rushing a project to theatrical release because of financial pressure, can backfire. Moana 2 made money, but it could have made more if developed properly from the start. And now we're down to the top two. One is a beloved sequel that dominated the year. The other is a polarizing disaster that lost more money than almost any film in history. Number 2, Deadpool and Wolverine, 2024. Deadpool and Wolverine became the R-rated box office king of 2024, grossing over $1,338 million worldwide and proving that superhero fatigue doesn't apply when the product is genuinely fun. Ryan Reynolds returned as the Merc with a mouth, this time joined by Hugh Jackman's Wolverine, in a multiverse adventure that mashed up Marvel lore with meta-comedy. The film delivered everything fans wanted: brutal action, fourth-wall-breaking humor, and genuine emotion. Seeing Jackman return to the role he retired from in Logan felt like a cinematic event. The chemistry between Reynolds and Jackman crackled, and the film balanced fan service with actual character development. Deadpool and Wolverine became the first R-rated film to cross $1 billion since Joker. In 2019, it silenced critics who claimed the MCU was dead and proved that audiences will show up for superhero movies if they're entertaining and don't demand homework. Why it fits. Deadpool and Wolverine succeeded because it respected its audience's intelligence while delivering unfiltered fun. The reported budget was around $190 million, making this a hugely profitable venture for Disney and Marvel. The takeaway: don't pander, don't sanitize, and trust your characters. Deadpool and Wolverine worked because it was made for adults who wanted irreverent action and didn't care about setting up 5 future movies. And now, the #1 highest-grossing film of 2024, a billion-dollar juggernaut that nobody saw coming. Number 1, Inside Out 2, 2024. Inside Out 2 became the biggest movie of 2024, crossing $1,698 million worldwide and proving that Pixar still knows how to tap into universal emotions. The sequel followed Riley as a teenager, introducing new emotions like anxiety, envy, embarrassment, and ennui. These new feelings clashed with joy, sadness, anger, fear, and disgust as Riley navigated the chaos of adolescence. The film was emotionally devastating in the best way, capturing the messy reality of growing up with nuance and humor. Anxiety, voiced by Maya Hawke, became the breakout character, a jittery orange emotion who meant well but spiraled into overthinking and panic. The film tackled mental health themes with care, showing how anxiety can hijack your sense of self. Inside Out 2 resonated across demographics. Kids related to Riley's struggles, teens saw themselves in her anxiety, and parents recognized the emotional turbulence their kids face. The animation was stunning, with the mind's abstract landscapes rendered in vivid, surreal detail. Why it belongs. Inside Out 2 succeeded because it earned its existence. It didn't just retread the first film's beats. It evolved Riley and explored new, emotional territory. The reported budget was around $200 million, which is high for animation, but justified by the scope and detail. The film became the highest-grossing animated movie of all time, surpassing even Disney's biggest hits. The lesson: Pixar thrives when it trusts emotion over spectacle. Inside Out 2 worked because it was about something, not just a sequel engineered for profit. And now, The Reckoning. Let's talk about the 4 flops hiding inside this top 10. The Flop Autopsy. So who flopped? Let's be clear about the final tally. Despicable. Me 4 flopped softly, making money but losing cultural relevance. Moana 2 flipped despite its billion-dollar gross because of budget bloat and thin margins. But the real disasters happened just outside the top 10, and they deserve dissection because they were supposed to be in this list. Joker. Folie à deux. The biggest bomb. Joker, Folie à deux became the single biggest financial disaster of 2024, losing approximately $144 million. That's not a typo. The sequel to a film that grossed over $1 billion and won Oscars became one of the worst flops in modern history. The Promise. A dark operatic musical exploring Joker and Harley Quinn's toxic romance, with Joaquin Phoenix and Lady Gaga delivering powerhouse performances. The Bet. Todd Phillips assumed fans of the first Joker wanted a challenging avant-garde sequel that deconstructed the character and critiqued fan adulation. He made a musical that wasn't really a musical, a comic book movie that hated comic books, and a sequel that resented its predecessor's success. The Crash. Audiences rejected it instantly. The film grossed only $207 million worldwide against a $200 million budget and massive marketing spend. Critics were divided, fans felt betrayed, and word of mouth turned poisonous. Joker 2 became infamous as a sequel that actively antagonized its audience. The Receipt. The film's courtroom scenes dragged, the musical numbers felt half-hearted, and the ending alienated everyone. Phillips made a movie for himself, not for the people who made the first film a phenomenon. Why It Belongs. Joker 2 is the ultimate cautionary tale about arrogance. It lost more money than most movies cost to make. The lesson: you can challenge your audience, but you can't insult them. Phillips made a sequel that felt like punishment, and audiences punished him back. Furiosa. A Mad Max saga. The prequel nobody demanded. Furiosa. A Mad Max saga lost approximately $119 million, making it the second biggest bomb of the year. George Miller's prequel to Mad Max. Fury Road had everything: a legendary director, a rising star in Anya Taylor-Joy, and Chris Hemsworth as a villain. It still crashed. The Promise. The origin story of Fury Road's most iconic character, exploring how Furiosa became the one-armed warrior we loved. The Bet. Miller assumed Fury Road's cult status would translate to interest in a prequel. He also bet on Taylor-Joy carrying a movie without Charlize Theron's presence or Max himself. The Crash. Audiences didn't care. Furiosa opened to a weak Memorial Day weekend and faded fast. The reported budget was $168 million, and the film barely made $174 million worldwide. The Receipt. Marketing felt too similar to Fury Road, offering nothing new. The story lacked urgency, and the film's length and pacing turned off casual viewers. Why It Belongs. Furiosa proves that prequels are risky even when the source material is beloved. Audiences wanted a continuation, not a flashback. The lesson: not every great movie needs a prequel, and if you make one, it better justify why we needed to go backward. Megalopolis. The Passion Project. Disaster. Megalopolis lost approximately $75 million and became the poster child for auteur ambition colliding with commercial reality. Francis Ford Coppola self-financed his dream project for $120 million, and the film grossed less than $15 million worldwide. The Promise. A visionary sci-fi epic about an architect trying to build a utopia in a corrupt city, told through Coppola's operatic lens. The Bet? Coppola believed his name and the film's audacity would draw audiences curious to see what a legend could do with complete creative freedom. The Crash. Nobody showed up. Critics were baffled, audiences were uninterested, and the film became a punchline. Megalopolis is dense, pretentious, and incoherent, a passion project that forgot to be watchable. The receipt? The film's interactive gimmick, a live actor interrupting the movie, felt like a desperate attempt to generate buzz. It didn't work. Why It Belongs. Megalopolis is a reminder that even legends can fail when they lose touch with what audiences want. The lesson: vision without discipline is chaos. Coppola needed an editor, a producer, and someone to tell him no. Kraven the Hunter, the superhero. Nobody wanted Kraven. The Hunter lost approximately $71 million, closing Sony's disastrous Spider-Man universe with a whimper. The film followed Kraven, a big-game hunter with superpowers, as he fought Russian mobsters and tried to reconcile with his father. The Promise? A gritty R-rated superhero origin story that felt distinct from the MCU. The Bet? Sony assumed Spider-Man adjacent characters could sustain a franchise even without Spider-Man. The Crash. Kraven opened to brutal reviews and dismal box office. Audiences had no investment in the character, the story felt generic, and superhero fatigue was real. The Receipt. Sony had already burned goodwill with Morbius and Madame Web. By the time Kraven arrived, nobody cared. Why It Belongs. Kraven is proof that brand recognition doesn't equal audience interest. The lesson: you can't build a universe around villains nobody cares about. Sony learned this the hard way. The pattern emerges. So what's the pattern? The films that succeeded respected their audience, delivered on genre expectations, and didn't wildly overspend. They knew what they were and committed fully. The films that flopped? They either chased prestige at the expense of entertainment, assumed brand loyalty was unshakable, or made films for themselves rather than audiences. 2024 taught Hollywood a harsh lesson. Audiences are smarter and less forgiving than ever. They'll show up for quality, but they'll punish arrogance. The flops all share one thing: they forgot who they were for. The Rule Book. Here are the 3 rules 2024 burned into Hollywood's brain. Rule number 1: budgets matter. $1 billion gross means nothing if you spent $700 million getting there. Efficiency wins. Rule number 2: respect your audience. Challenge them, sure, but don't insult them. Joker 2 forgot this and paid the price. Rule number 3: franchise. Fatigue is real. Audiences will abandon even beloved IP if you take them for granted. Despicable Me 4 and Furiosa learned this too late. So what's next? 2025 is already heating up with Superman, Captain America, and Avatar 3. Hollywood's betting billions on franchises again. The question is whether they learned anything from 2024's carnage. If you want to see the full breakdown of Hollywood's riskiest bets and how the 2025 slate could reshape the industry, hit that subscribe button and check out our video on the most dangerous movies Hollywood's greenlighting this year. Because if 2024 taught us anything, it's that the box office is a battlefield and not everyone survives.